Hey, this is David Thompson, and this is going to be the first video in a short series introducing you to my game Castle Itter. This is a game that's being published by DBG. Castle Itter, if you're not familiar with it, it's a relatively obscure battle that was fought towards the end of the war in Europe during World War II. As a matter of fact, this period of time where the battle takes place is after Hitler is killed himself, but before the actual end of the war in Europe. So there's about a week-long period, and this takes place during that time frame. So during that time, a lot of the Wehrmacht units, the German Wehrmacht units, were disbanding, heading home, fleeing. But at the same time, there were roving bands of SS still carrying out attacks, retribution attacks, things like that. They were still loyal to the right. So this game takes place in that context. I should say this is a true story, despite the fact that it sounds almost unbelievable. And so basically, the background here is that there's this castle. It looks like a medieval castle, though it was actually built in the 1800s. The site of the castle was a fortress that dates back to the Middle Ages. But the actual castle here that the game takes place, it's actually was built in the 1800s. So this is an Austrian castle. It was taken over by the Germans leading into the war. It served a couple of different purposes, but ultimately it was absorbed into the concentration camp or the prison camp system and was used as a camp to hold French VIPs. So it had some other prisoners too, but primarily for French VIPs. So were heads of state or key political French prisoners. So these French prisoners, they were being guarded by the SS, and the SS leave. They abandon the castle. And so the French prisoners are trying to figure out a way to escape, and they reach out for help. One of the people they ultimately make contact with is a former Wehrmacht officer. He is actually working with Austrian resistance to defend a local town against SS attack. And he doesn't have the men to go free the French prisoners, so he goes out and finds some Americans. Ultimately, he comes in contact with a company commander from a tank unit, and they send a rescue party, which by the time it gets to the castle consists of a single Sherman Easy 8, part of the tank crew for the Sherman, a few U.S. riflemen, and some Wehrmacht riflemen. And then when they get there, they find that also at the castle is an SS officer, a former SS officer. And the reason he's there is because he had become friends with the French prisoners while he was on convalescent leave in a nearby town. So they had reached out to him also, and he was trying to help organize a defense. So ultimately, we have the defenders of this castle consisting of U.S. tankers and riflemen, Wehrmacht riflemen, both officers and enlisted, a single SS officer, some Austrian resistance fighter, and a group of French prisoners, to include former heads of state. So that's our motley crew of defenders. They numbered around 25 to 30 in total. So by the time the rescue party arrived, there wasn't enough time to free the prisoners and head back to where the U.S. unit had originated from. So they stay overnight, and in the early morning the next day, they are attacked by SS. So the estimates are about 200 SS attack them, and throughout the rest of that day, this castle is besieged by these SS. So that's the context. As I said, almost unbelievable. It's oftentimes called the strangest battle of World War II. It's the only time where German and Americans fought side by side. So that's the context. So let's talk a little bit about the components. So I've laid everything out here. I'm using Tabletop Simulator, which is a virtual tabletop software to show you the game. The game consists of counters for the defenders. So we can see that they've all been laid out here. Counters for the SS attackers. A deck of cards that's sequenced by subdecks. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's going to control the SS attackers' AI. Some other tokens that are used to track statuses on the board, and then some tactics cards. Now these tactics cards are used to bolster the strength of the SS. They can be added to the game to increase difficulty. I should also say that this is a solitaire game. It's designed specifically to support solitaire play. However, there is a two-player competitive variant, and in that variant, the SS attacker player would take use of both the tactics cards and the normal deck of cards. So that's a brief overview of the components. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this first overview video is the core line of sight system for the game. So you may be familiar with a game called Pavlov's House, which actually was designed after this one but published first. But regardless, it uses a similar line of sight concept. So what we have is each of these positions is what's called a combat position. It's going to be occupied by a defender. And they are going to be defending the castle against the SS attackers. So the SS attackers are coming in on these paths. If a combat position is the same color as an attacker's position, then they have line of sight to one another. So in this case, this combat position has line of sight to two different SS attacker positions. So these corner positions are very good to defend from, but that means you're also susceptible to attack from more positions. And I neglected to mention, I should say that the actual goal of the game is to last through the SS deck here. And what that's representing is the attacks throughout the day when the castle was besieged. If you make it through the deck, then it represents being the additional U.S. reinforcements from the 142nd Infantry Regiment arrive and relieve the force that's defending the castle. So that would be the goal of the game. You're trying to essentially keep the defenders alive, try to hold out, and if the SS ever enter into the castle, then you lose immediately. Okay, so that's an overview of the game. I'll follow this video up with some additional videos talking about the defenders, how they work their actions, their attributes, and then also go over how the SS cards work, how the attackers are controlled by the SS deck. Thanks.